Welcome to Vanishing Gates. I'm Jay, and these are. Well, there's a shoulder.
I'm sorry, I would. Let's go.
We're already going.
Oh, the distracted Jack.
Yes, and this is.
Katie Cat.
Anyway, so last time, I'm sorry, we've been off for a few weeks. A lot went on. Jack got super sick, and I and Jay were busy with other things.
Mm-hmm.
So, but we left you with Mel's Hole, kind of on a bit of a cliffhanger about what was going on. Now, to recap, Katie Cat, do you want to talk a little bit about what we talked about the last episode?
Well, we talked about Mel's Hole.
Okay, yes.
Wow.
Cinco de Mayo may be catching up with Katie Cat a little hard tonight.
Yeah, I was out before I got here, so we talked about Mel's Hole and how it was a hole. And how it was a mysterious hole, and there's no pictures of it, there's no videos, there's no nothing.
Wait, you're telling me that? So what I know, this is essentially just a giant fucking hole in the earth. It was in Canada, right?
Washington.
Washington.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like Canada.
It was supposed to be
Basically.
super deep and like a large deep hole, right? Like, and no one takes a picture. It's just a hole.
There's
like
no
I mean,
pictures of it.
it would be weird to have a picture of a hole, but at
Yeah.
the same time, it's weird to not have a picture of that fucking hole.
Okay, so basically in '97,
So where's the hole?
Coast
now?
to Coast AM, Art Bell got a call from this guy saying that he had this bottomless pit, so-called, on his property. So we'll get into that. So when we left off the last episode, we left off on touching on the third call. We didn't finish the third call. We're going to get through that in this episode. So we got a call to Coast AM from a guy calling himself, again, Mel Waters. The story doesn't stop with just a hole in the ground, though. We talked about this hole, how it was supposedly bottomless, that he had cast a lot of fishing lines, something like 80,000 feet down it. There was weird phenomenon with dogs that wouldn't go near it, animals didn't like it, things like that. People would dump stuff in it, never seemed to get full, and it seemed to be bottomless.
Okay, hold on.
What?
So animals wouldn't go near.
They wouldn't go near
a
it.
corroding area, of course.
Well, no, this is a hole that was always about 9 feet in circumference. It just stayed round. It had been there for at least 100 years or more that they knew of, that was recorded, where people were just dumping stuff into it and it never went anywhere. Beams of black light were reported to come out of this thing, touching the sky. The blackest black you could assume while also being a light. Strange as that sounds.
Who reported all this?
A man named Mel Waters, who
The
called
neighbors.
Coast to Coast
Just
AM.
one guy?
The neighbors, truckers, things like that have reported over the years.
Yeah.
This has been an ongoing phenomenon. Well, it was at the time. So Mel had called Coast to Coast a couple times at this point.
Okay.
So we went through the first and second call with the first part, and now we're on the second part where he's going through the third call a little more. So the story doesn't stop, like I said, with the hole in the ground. The third call was in April of 2000. Now Art straight up asks Mel, because he had just seen the Blair Witch Project. He says, "Is this a Blair Witch situation?" Because Art had believed at first, like many people somehow, that the Blair Witch Project was a real thing.
That was a really interesting PR.
It was.
PR situation. Like if you didn't read,
If you didn't pay attention, you would think that it was real. Like
there was actually a website attached to it that people didn't know about. That was like the diaries and stuff like that. And there's actually really cool. I know this is off topic, but it's kind of like a just I'd say like go watch the video.
Mhm.
There's a video that what's that dude who like explains videos? Foundflix, not Foundflix.
know.
He does like theories around videos. It's like a game theories, movie
Film
theories.
theory.
Film theory, and he has one around the Blair Witch Project, which is really interesting because if you read the diaries that people can't access, I don't know if it's still accessible, but essentially it was she had suspicions around the guys the whole time in her diary, and the theory is that they had actually taken her out there. There was no witch, that because they were like, one was a sound master, you know, he worked with sound,
Okay.
and he had access to magnets. He could mess with like the compass by putting a magnet at the bottom of it, because you know he put like a magnet near it with just a
Interesting.
compass.
Well, let's reel it back, though, because it has nothing to do with this whatsoever.
Yeah, no.
The only reason that even comes up is because Mel brings it up on the show.
I was
And
saying,
we have a
watch
lot
it.
to get through, is why I say that. Otherwise, I'd be down.
Watch us first, then watch.
I don't want to. Yeah, we can talk about that in another episode. I don't want to like rabbit trail off on this because there's a lot of shit that goes on here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, anyway, Mel says, you know, it's not a hoax. I'm not going to be dropping any bombshells on you this episode. This is exactly what I'm telling you. It's the truth. So Mel further explains that the property was his ex-wife's. They had some trailers on it. So the wife had it prior to their marriage. They got divorced. He got it in the divorce, basically. He got a lease agreement with her through the divorce as part of the payment for it. He had some trailers on it. He was living in one of them. it was an unimproved land, so there wasn't any kind of like work done on it. No trees cleared. There wasn't like cattle fields. You know, it wasn't really used for anything aside from this guy going up there to do research with herbal medicines. We talked about that a bit the last episode as well, the last part. So Mel goes on to clarify the property location is on the Manistash Ridge near Ellensburg in the near center of Washington. He'd been there for several years at this point. He and his wife had split. He maintained the lease with her, like I said. The hole was 9 feet across with stonework around it, like into the hole. It was round, and he said it was perfectly round. Mel had it covered, but he would allow people to dump things in there, including tires, dead cattle, dogs. His favorite was to throw TV tubes down it. And when he asked if he knew, what the hole originally was, he said the hole had just always been there, and he ended up using a downrigger and dropped something like 80,000 feet of fishing line in there, as he was once a shark fisherman professionally.
Could that have just caught on the angle of something? Or?
No, he said it was about 2 feet out or 3 feet out. He would put it and drop it, and there would be no snags. He put a 1 pound weight on it, and it would just go down, and it would move like this for a while, like you can move it, so it wasn't snagged on anything.
Have you ever heard of a lava tunnel?
Mm-hmm. But this
I
is
think we did a
straight
show
down.
on lava tunnels.
Probably, but this was a
People-
straight down thing.
Yeah, but I mean the thing is if it went down and it angled out weird, it could just look like it goes on forever.
Well,
but
another thing is he dropped stuff. So the first time he did the test, he had dropped down a packet of some lifesavers on a thing to see if they would like hit water and like become crap. And they came back up in fine shape, so it wasn't too hot. It didn't because lifesavers at too much temperature the wrapper will burn.
yeah,
You know, if it got too hot. Yeah, and they weren't distorted. There wasn't any kind of, and even if it wasn't hot enough to burn the wrapper, it would still discolor it. But nothing changed.
You think in the modern era that they'd be able to just drop like a flashlight or something down there?
Well, this was in 1997, and when you drop anything down there, you'd never hear it hit the bottom.
Yeah.
And one dude had been dumping thousands of tires in there over the years, and it never came up.
Well, that's what I wonder because you've heard of Centralia.
Yeah.
Where the dumbasses
Well,
dump.
it's
Use the fucking coal mine as a dumping ground.
yeah, and then it caught fire. It's still on fire.
And that's why Centralia is still burning. That's what I was saying is that maybe the hole actually has a point where it veers off and just goes into further caves. So that's why it was never filled up because it goes into like a tunnel system.
Well,
a
this
lava
doesn't
tunnel
this
system.
doesn't do that. It just goes because otherwise you'd feel like we went into it the first episode. You can go back and listen to it and get caught
Yeah,
up
it
there.
Yeah, we don't
Just
get
goes-
caught in there.
We're gonna get past this whole thing
It
here
just
shortly.
goes straight down.
We have other shit
Yeah.
to talk
We're
about.
gonna, well, we're gonna get past this hole in a minute.
I'm sorry, guys. I've been
Um,
absent because
Yeah,
I'm sick. So
I would have emailed this to you, but we wouldn't have time to get it to you because I
Okay.
finished. I
Yeah.
did 3 episodes worth of material today, so.
Okay.
Well, we already did one.
Yeah, there was. I know I did 3 more. There was reportedly a weird feeling around the hole, akin to being surprised. He said being surprised by the moon. I'm not sure what he fucking meant by that.
Did he try like perspiration H?
Preparation H. you mean?
Preparation H.
That's
Was he
a
feeling
different-
weird around the hole?
Yeah. So I hear it's very good on the whole. Preparation H is a good thing, which also ironically was about the moon in that joke in Austin Powers.
Oh yeah.
Moon Unit Alpha and Moon Unit Zappa. Anyway, so
Oh my God.
reeling it back. He said he felt like it was like being surprised by the moon. So I can't really understand what the fuck he was saying when he said that. That pontification. I tried to think about it.
What exactly
And-
did you say again? Surprised by the moon.
Yeah, the feeling of being surprised by the moon. Like you go outside and the moon is there and you're like, oh, that's the moon.
Oh, it's the moon.
He had the same feeling about it. So people would see this dark black shaft of light coming out from the hole, like I said, from time to time, and it would expand to the sky, and it was like the blackest of black, blacker than black. So, he would see this from like a rest stop that was north of where Mel's hole is supposed to be. So, for instance, I can bring up here where Mel's hole is on the map, but we'll get to that. I just want to pull that up and cue it because we're going to get to that in a second. So Mel had been living in Australia at this point. He continued to work with his herbs and had some successes with his plants. Somehow got to move over the seas with him without a problem, which is really weird. Countries are really strange about having foreign plants moving into their environment, especially Australia. You don't want foreign species coming in. Like out here, we have foreign species of wood beetle that is eating up our forests in the North Coast.
Oh yeah.
Every once in a while, we find them. The rule is to get them, isolate it, kill any others you see, and bring it to the ranger station.
There's another invasive species with like shrimp, for instance, stuff like that, which came from China.
Mussels and stuff like that as well.
They're killing off a lot of shrimp and stuff like that. And same thing with Hawaii. They have a coconut caterpillar or whatever.
So how did Mel go from doing well in Australia? Because at this point we talked about he was doing very well. He was making a lot of money, like something like $3 million a year or something like that.
What?
That was the package when they offered him to move, so they could do the property. Because the government at this point or someone had taken over his property. Remember? And so they offered him a bunch of money to go to Australia.
Well, I mean, you could just do a check by the Bureau of Land Management and see if it's on the list.
Well, it doesn't matter at this rate anyway, and we'll get to that. So he was wealthy at this point because he was making millions of dollars. Well, he came back to America. That's where we find him during this call. Mel was supposed to be a guest on Coast to Coast a year prior to this particular call. Art had even promoted it and talked about it. But Mel was a no-show for the show, to the point where Art was really worried about it. People were phoning in. People were writing Art Bell. I actually remember, because I've been listening to Coast since I was really young. It's been on the air for a long time. And it was something I vaguely remember. Not super well, but I do remember this from when they did the best of Coast to Coast. More than once I've heard this story. On the day of the show, Mel had helped his nephew move to Olympia. And he was returning the U-Haul truck to Tacoma area and was taking a bus down to Olympia when there was some fashion of altercation, a fight of some kind on the bus, which we talked about the last episode. The bus pulled into a park and ride, and when the transit authority showed up, they started asking questions about what happened, and they started their investigation. Well, when Mel said he had to be in Olympia to get things done, the transit people said they'd get him there, and that's when Mel loses his memory. About 12 days later, Mel says he found himself in San Francisco in a rough part of town in an alley. Bums were trying to wake him up. The bums were trying to get him to sing On the Road again because apparently Mel looks like Willie Nelson.
On the road again?
Yeah. So, no idea how he got there from transit van to an alley in San Francisco 12 days later. He was still wearing the same clothes that were dirty from helping his nephew move, minus a belt buckle that he knew he had, a custom belt buckle that he made. He realized that his arms hurt by his inner elbows, and he pulled up the sleeves. He saw track marks, like needle marks, and spots where it looked like surgical tape had been put over his arm, like he would hold an IV tube down.
Weird.
And all the back of his teeth were missing. So he had no molars, no wisdom teeth, and he could still taste the blood like it was fresh, and the cuts on his gums.
They were just removed.
Yeah. So they took the belt buckle, and the thing about the belt buckle, it was made from a silver fork. He would make these belt buckles and sell them at like flea markets and stuff. As just kind of an aside business, he would make some kind of like, art contempo jewelry kind of stuff, or folk jewelry, whatever you want to call it. But he had put a nice rock in it and stuff. And his pants and socks obviously were still with him. So now Mel finds himself broke and just abandoned in San Francisco. He had to get a hold of his nephew to get back. His nephew had been frantic since he'd been missing, because he'd been missing for 12 days now, and he was supposed to be there that night. Now, Olympia to San Francisco is a long drive. It's not 12 days drive, though. You can do it in a day. But he wasn't doing it after helping his nephew move all day and then trying to get on a bus to get back to Olympia from Tacoma. That's not that long a trip.
No, I've done it a few times.
Yeah. So Mel goes on to say that he doesn't believe that the situation was caused due to him appearing on Coast to Coast. He had other things he said that were going on that could have been the case instead. Art says it's a bit odd that it happens at this point, that he was on the show, and suddenly this is happening. But Mel says, just put that thought on the back burner for now. I don't believe that's what happened. It doesn't mean it's wrong. He says thinks it was something else. So, anyway, Mel gets back to his nephew, where he says he's now residing at the time that he calls the show. And he finds out that his ex had taken legal action against him. So Mel had the lease on the property as part of the divorce, as we said. He was then served papers saying that the lease was violated, with his ex claiming that underground fuel tanks had been put in, a septic system was put in, roads were paved, all things that were not supposed to be occurring on the property under his lease agreement with his ex. And apparently, whatever entity had leased it from Mel had added these things. Now, the ex had no way to get it on this property at all, Mel said. He thought it was really strange that she would know anything about what's going on there, let alone, because he didn't even know. But somehow she knew enough to file a lawsuit against him to seize the property from him. Now, Mel had also been paying her $25,000 a month while he was in Australia.
Wow.
So she was making money doing nothing with the property just because he was being cool. And he told her, if anything comes from this and it becomes profitable, I'll make sure you get a share. So he was just paying her anyway, even though nothing was coming from it. Mel's never tried to sell a book. He never tried to go on television. The only thing he did was get on Coast to Coast and then put up an email later on for people to contact him who may have had similar experiences. So at this point, it gets kind of weird because Mel went from doing really well to end up selling plasma for cigarette money, as he said.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so you go from, I think he said $50,000 a month or something.
Yeah, track marks. Drugs are a hell of a thing.
No, he didn't do drugs. He just had the marks in him like needle marks. Like single needle marks, like IV tubes, like
I
IV
get
marks.
that, but
Well, he's not a drug guy. He's a drug guy, but he's not a drug user.
he sells.
He doesn't sell drugs. He
sees
does.
weird holes with lights and
Well, a lot of people have seen it at this point, apparently.
looks like Willie Nelson. If the Willie Nelson shoe fits.
Well, I don't think it works in this case. So
Oh, my God.
Mel gave a list of names of people that he was looking to contact at this point to Art Bell in a prior, because he would fax Art Bell. Who's back old enough, guys. If you don't know what a fax machine is, Google that. We don't have time to get into that. It's a whole other thing. If you're too young to know what that is, I can't help you.
That's also another lost relic from times far gone.
But he was wanting to get the names out there, the people he's trying to contact, because he had no way to get a hold of these people. And Art was not having that. He's like, I'm not putting their names out there. This isn't happening. So Mel brings up his time in Australia. And he talks about the plants that he was dealing with. And those plants in Australia that he transferred there were ones that he had near the hole that he had been growing these things. Because he had a lab there. He was working on homeopathic medicine, basically, to try to cure things and whatnot with this medication through these plants. So Mel mentions finding, So Mel brings up his time in Australia and the plants, like I said, he was dealing with the properties he had. At this point, Mel's 68 years old, so he's not a young man anyway. These plants, the Australian government had approached him and even used these plants to treat some men that had HIV that were dying, and after being treated, they were fine. Fine. So his research on Australia was going swimmingly.
Is there a record for that?
Apparently. I don't know. I didn't look into that. But that's what Mel said. This is all based on phone calls that we're getting to Coast. Mm-hmm. So Mel mentions finding a gun in a holster on the property that he gave to a man as a deposit on another property to rent while he was leaving the property, or because the snow had fallen. That's why he wasn't living on the property when the government showed up. The government shows up or whoever it is, shows up right after this phone call to Coast the first time. Like within 2 days or 3 days. So Mel is now renting this other property. He used this gun, a German P38, or, for gun nuts like me, a Walther P38, replaced, I think, the Luger P9 or whatever, in the German army.
Walther?
A Walther, yeah, P38.
Walther's British. Is it?
No, it's not.
I thought it was a...
You're letting James Bond fool you.
No,
it's a German gun.
I thought it was an English gun, a British... I thought it was part of the British officers carried it.
No, it's... Anyway.
Am I literally using James Bond as my
You are using...
right now?
Yes, because he carried a Walther.
My bad.
It's not a British gun.
I'm not a gun nut, I don't know.
Anyway, the man Mel gave the gun to, he now can't get a hold of this man. This is one of the reasons I bring this up, because of the list. He's on that list. Mel seems to think the gun has something very important about it. And what's weird about this gun, the man he had left, the man that had the gun, he left his family, he left everything, and he just disappeared. He just went away. Took the gun and vanished one night. Out of nowhere, no reason, no explanation. His son's like, hey, he's talking to Mel. He's like, hey, I don't know what happened. He's just gone. So Mel goes on to say about the gun, and the guy's son said he'd become just obsessed with it. And that he would shoot the gun, and it wouldn't make a sound when he fired it. Just dead silent. That gun doesn't do that.
That's not even I may not be like know its origins, but I do know what you're talking about. That's like a it's a 9mm, right?
It's not even integrally suppressed.
No, it's nowhere near integrally suppressed, and it doesn't even have room for.
It's not even
suppressor
fit
on it.
for a suppressor in that model.
You have to get it customized, right? And it's a later
If
model.
you were to do it, I don't know why it's a longer barrel Walther.
That's weird.
But this, even with a silencer, though, a silencer. Anyway, guys, it's not really a silencer.
Suppressor.
It's called a suppressor for a reason. It's not like the movies where it goes thup thup thup. It's still loud, especially in 9mm, which is what this gun is chambered in.
Because I know I watched a couple people and they said it's still even
It's
with
still
the silencer, it's still about the same.
Even it's
as a jet engine, it's still louder than a jet
still
engine.
loud.
Sounds.
It's. I mean, you can shoot without ear pro. I don't suggest ever shooting without ear pro. For the most modern silencers, they're not silent.
Guns are not silent.
No.
Even with the suppressors.
Anyway, so that's my gun nerdness about this. But yeah,
Actually,
the man's son goes on. It gets weirder though. The gun's not just magically silent. The man's son also said he would put the gun near the radio. The radio would pick up stations from just all over the place. When he said all over the place, I want to just say I don't mean like down the road. I mean like the past, the present, the future, different types of station from different countries, different parts of the world. And he would just wave his hand and it would change the channel to something different and weird. He would wave the hand at the gun and the radio would change the frequency. And if he held his hand in place, he could keep that going and keep listening to whatever was going on.
Huh.
None of that makes any kind of sense.
No.
Okay.
Now, the only reason Mel says he wants to find him is make sure he's okay. He's worried something happened to him. And Mel's really concerned about, at this point, that these people he can't get a hold of, something bad has befallen them because of something that had to do with him.
This just sounds like a bunch of crazy shit.
It does. It gets worse. It gets
Crazy.
much weirder.
It sounds like Mel went through a break,
It.
a mental break when he got sued or something like that.
This is only the 3rd out of 5 calls, and it gets much weirder. So, anyway, another guy that Mel wanted to track down was this Mexican fellow that had been dumping tires into the hole for many years. Thousands of bad tires. Mel had given either his son or grandson, he couldn't remember which one it was, some 5-gallon buckets full of dirt and rocks and stuff from the property to try to gain traction in his truck to leave because he'd gotten stuck on the property. Those of you who know, when you're off-roading and stuff, sometimes you need extra traction. You either add weight to the back or you put it down in front of your tires so you can go more. And Mel was trying to get a hold of this guy that he'd given these dirt and stuff to, and for a couple reasons. I'm guessing he wants to test whatever the soil's like, but also I think he wanted to see, you know, what happened to those people. But Mel had been approached to the Australian government, like I said, about helping those people with HIV and stuff, and they got cured. Well, so he was doing all this good stuff, you know, and he comes back to America, and that just was a choice that bit him hard in the ass. Coming back to America is when everything started to fall down on him. So Mel mentions another guy, a Hungarian guy, and he mentions a priest that he wants to get a hold of as well. And towards the end of the 3rd call, Mel does talk about his ex some more, and he clearly wants something back from her after all of this. He cannot get a hold of her. She's vaporized in the ether, and he's unable to get a hold of her for anything. And he would like some of his money back, because now he's broke, living with his nephew. So Mel said there was a very strong connection, though, at some point. And I didn't get into this because he didn't elaborate. Art kind of wanted to go in a different direction. But Mel said he felt there was a very strong connection between Heaven's Gate and said that Marshall Applewhite had been in Ellensburg, like right after the Coast to Coast appearance and like right before the whole Heaven's Gate ritual self-forever sleeping that happened.
The cult thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where they decided to
Where they all drank the Kool-Aid?
Wait, is it
and-
Marshall
No,
Applewhite
they-
doing that shit?
Or
They cut their junk off and then took a forever night-night. I don't remember exactly how they did it.
They got
What?
dressed up in really nice tracksuits.
Yeah, they all wore really cool tracksuits
And
They
and
cut
made.
their
nice
junk
new
off?
shoes.
Yeah, they
became
castrated
eunuchs.
themselves.
And
Didn't
then
know about
laid
that
down.
part.
Each one of them was administered.
Yeah, it was weird.
They were administered. I don't think they were.
Was it
wasn't-
ketamine and
wasn't
something else
Kool-Aid or
mixed?
something like that.
We'll do an episode on that. We'll get
Yeah.
into
They
that
already
then.
did, but yeah, they administered. I can't remember what they were given something to eat
they?
or drink. Yeah,
It
Well,
was
we
the
can do that
Kool-Aid.
again. No, that was Jim Jones.
that was Jim. That was
Oh.
Jonestown.
So that was kind of the 3rd call. Mel leaves us hanging at this point for a little while. So this call starts kind of odd, to my opinion, the 4th call. And I'm not the only person that feels this way. This is kind of a prominent thought that a few people have thought that Mel sounds odd. He doesn't sound really like Mel. He doesn't talk quite the same. His voice sounds a little different. This is years later. But Mel also says that before this, he does say in this conversation that he did get his back teeth replaced. So that might be part of it.
Well, you got dentures. It can change your.
Yeah, absolutely.
talk.
So maybe, but he does have some other slang terminology he uses. It doesn't seem to be the same as when he started. But then again, also time has passed by. So he starts with talking about how he's been traveling with truckers. They usually confuse him for Willie Nelson, as he said before, just like the homeless people in San Francisco. And of course, this is now 5 years after the first call. So we've been at this relationship with Mel off and on for a minute. I know people that have marriages that were shorter than this, with just about as much interaction with the spouse, apparently. At this point, Art makes Mel swear on the Bible. He literally, during the call, says, Mel, do you have a Bible next to you? In that Art Bell kind of way, you know? Says, I want you to go get it and bring it here right now. And then I want you to put your hand on that Bible and swear to us, Mel, that you're telling the truth. Because now Mel has already sent Art another message prior to the phone call to tell him what's been going on. And boy, does it get a weird. So, at this point, you know, Art has heard some of the biggest, craziest stories ever. And this is starting to become one of those. And Art says one of the most unintentionally funny things I've ever heard the man say, or anyone for that point. He looks at Mel and he says, the government came and took your hole, then what? We can all relate around tax time. Yes, I wrote that joke down. I thought it was good. Anyway, Mel and Art rehash the previous call, and then they rehash and touch base about the loss of his money. Mel apparently gave most of his money to wombats.
What did they need it for?
The animal?
Yes, wombats in Australia. So what had happened was wombats are endangered.
Yeah.
And they've been going through a hard time. So he donated, because he was living pretty well doing research. He put money into the research laboratories and stuff in the grants, trying to get more grants. And he was sending his wife $25,000 a month. Wow. And then a lot of his money, because he lived pretty sparsely, he was a pretty chill guy, pretty hippie kind of guy, it sounds like, he would donate to trying to restore wombat habitats in Australia. And so that's where most of his money was going.
That's really cool of him.
If it's true. Yes.
That's sweet, yeah.
So,
or wombats.
But it also put him broke when everything hit the fan. You know, and so he called the lab from the States to see how things were going, and by the time he got to them, all of it had been defunded and dismantled, and everyone had lost their money. He had been paying all the staff, and he wasn't there, and the money was gone, and everything was dismantled now. Even after this great thing with these guys with the Hibs, he just couldn't afford to keep it going, and Australia apparently didn't think it was worth rehashing. At this point, Mel talks about running into a man in Ellensburg. Because the conversation is not like linear with this guy. You're all over the place. Much like talking to Jack for more than 2 seconds. Yeah. So
if you like rabbit holes, I got them all.
Yeah, so he talks to this guy. He noticed this guy has a belt buckle, and it's one of the belt buckles that Mel made. Because he made these belt buckles. He made like 10 of them in a certain fashion. He took these silver forks and he'd fashion them and make them and add stuff to embellish them and make them all nice and sell them. So he noticed the guy had one similar or the one that he had made. What's interesting about the belt buckle is that it had 3 coins added to it. And when they were looking at the buckle, one of the coins is a 1943 Roosevelt dime. Now that's a big issue. They start realizing this. And Mel didn't realize at the time, he wasn't paying attention to it. Because the other 2 coins that were on the belt buckle were, I think, Lenin and also Churchill. And it was for the peace accord they had written. So to commemorate that, he had all 3 people on the belt buckle. It's kind of a cool little homage to what had gone on. Well, the problem with the Roosevelt 1943 is they don't exist. The Roosevelt dime was made in 1946 to honor Roosevelt after his death from polio in 1945. So this coin was dated to 1943, and it had a mark, a mint mark on it with a B. We don't have a mint in any place that has a B. You'll see D's,
The only places mint
P's,
Denver and San Francisco and
S's.
St. Louis, right?
There's only so many
three
mint
mints,
marks.
I think, in the United States.
3 or 4. I can't remember. I used to know.
I
'cause
might
I
be
used to
missing
collect
one,
coins.
but I'm pretty sure there's only 3.
But anyway, so
And San Francisco mint, I don't think runs anymore.
there's no way that dime could exist.
I think it's San Francisco. Jesus,
Is my
remember
point.
this. I collect coins. I should remember this shit. I got a big old collection at home.
I know, so do I, somewhere. So he mentions then again finding the magic Walther, as I'm calling it, and also finding this Chinese magic luck money pouches. These little red silk. You see them all the time in like Chinatowns and stuff. I have one floating around here somewhere. You put money in it for good luck. And that's where he found 10 of these Roosevelt dimes in this little pouch. He dug it up on the property. So it had like a B for baby was the mint mark on it, which just, like I said, doesn't make sense. So the man that owns the buckle, then after the conversation, and they're realizing, hey, this is weird, takes it to a coin dealer who's apparently just flabbergasted by it, which is understandable. And the coin dealer offers the guy a shit ton of money for it. Posting that maybe it's a prototype. That's what his thought was. Posited. He's like, I'm thinking this might be a prototype. I want to buy this from you. And the guy says, well, let me give you my number, and I'll sleep on it. And that next day, the Treasury Department shows up at the guy's house and seizes the belt buckle.
Yeah, that's actually not really uncommon. You think it would be uncommon, but if you possess anything that is actually a prototype, a fake mint mark, or the potential to be a misprint, as in someone misprinted, because there's actually a guy who illegally printed. I can't remember. It was like '89 or something. It was like the '80s or something. That he illegally printed some misprints. Though he cut them wrong on purpose to make them collectible, and his son wound up having them. Or no, sorry, they were accident cuts, and his son wound up having them. They're actually illegal to possess.
Well, yeah,
because they're legal tender, but because of what they are, they're not supposed to be in
So
circulation.
if you have cash in your pocket, it doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the United States government.
Yeah,
If you have
they
your
could
possessions.
show up and just be like, "Give me that," and guess what? It could be a $10 million coin, but if you fucked up and let the wrong people know,
to a degree, you can have some of those coins as long as they're circulated coins or coins that aren't like that, where there could be a prototype.
One of the mistakes that guy made was he let the
didn't
wrong people
take
know,
the
and it
money.
was an uncirculated coin.
He should have just taken the money
and it
cashed
came
that
right
check
off the
that day.
print. That was the problem. Is it came right off the print and it was never circulated.
I would have cashed
His dad
that.
kept
I would
it.
have cashed that check that day.
Yeah,
and
should
been
have,
like,
but-
here's your coin, and just take the money. Now he's out a belt buckle.
But
too.
that's why you get rare coins. Some of them circulate in commonly, and it's not actually that uncommon. And the 43 coin, it would not shock me if they had been working on a die.
Before he died.
The B might be a marker to show that it's not supposed to be
Maybe.
in circulation. It might be a
Yeah.
private mint.
But you would think that
used
would have
by-
shown up again, and I've never heard of anything like that,
I
even
think
collecting
it's
coins.
the reserve controls that, right? It might be a
Yeah.
reserve, a fake, or
Well,
not a fake,
it's the
but
mint. It's the mint it's minted in.
Well,
That's a mint mark.
it might be a prototype mint mark just to use to show that it's not
Maybe.
supposed to be circulated.
No, they
It's not supposed to be
would still
released
the
or
prototype
something.
at a mint, though.
Yeah, but they
So-
might use it to show like if it comes from this mint, but it's not supposed to go into circulation, and it's just a prototype, something that they're working on because they were probably
Yeah.
working on a Roosevelt because of the fact of how big, his presidency was and how
Well, and
memorial
they
it was
knew
supposed to be.
the American people didn't know that he was dying of polio, but the government did.
But it was,
People around him did.
let's face it, his accomplishments in the first place were gonna get him on a coin.
Well, yeah.
Like that was inevitably going to happen to Roosevelt. So
Well,
it didn't.
yeah, he created welfare.
No, but
He did.
his other works.
That's what he did.
Come on now.
Anyway, so
The fake stories of Teddy Roosevelt are legendary. I mean the true stories.
Topic.
Teddy Roosevelt's a different president.
Is it the wrong? Am I thinking the wrong
I'm
guy?
thinking of Teddy Roosevelt, not FDR. Franklin Delano.
Oh my God, I'm so bad with American
You
history.
are
This
really
makes me
bad.
laugh. I don't know
I'm
American
leaving this
history,
in.
but I know coins. So I know a little bit about coins, but not American
So
history.
Mel says he dug up these coins on the property, but it hadn't occurred to him in the previous calls until he had put two and two together because he had met this guy after the second call, or the second call. This is the third call. At this point, Mel said his ex had just vanished. Like I said, and it's still under the possession of whoever took the property over. The property's still there.
He wanted money from her
that
to
if you
push these
check.
things.
If you check the satellite image, this is why I brought this up, over Ellensburg, you can see the property because it doesn't show up. It's just two white squares, is what he's saying at the time. Now, I did pull up the thing. It's not the same thing now, but it's marked as Mel's Hole, but God knows if that's really what is here. See if I can get this bigger.
You know,
So here is
I find it
Ellensburg.
rude that you didn't bring something for everybody.
Here's Ellensburg.
Huh?
Anyway,
I find it
show.
rude you didn't bring something for
Anyway,
everybody.
here's
What,
Ellensburg.
McDonald's? Oh,
Edit mark at
he
30
was in a
minutes.
hurry.
I'm trying to get this recorded. Can we not?
Sorry.
Okay, I'll be editing now. 10 minutes of time. So Ellensburg is here, and then here's where it's marked as Mel's Hole on the map. And when you gleam in, there's not a whole lot of shit to
Yeah, but
see.
there's no actual picture of it.
Well, here's the thing. It's blurry.
Oh, that
This is a satellite
yeah.
image that can pick up the top of your house and look down your chimney, and that's what it shows over Mel's
It
Hole.
looks like nothing.
Have you ever looked over Area 51?
No, and I'm not going to either.
It's blacked out.
There's a few places like that in the
Yeah.
world.
That's
But
what
yeah,
I'm saying.
so
It looks like
They're not that subtle. They would have blacked it out. if
this,
it was
like the
important.
bushes or whatever that is.
yeah, it just looks like random
Move,
spot
Yeah.
here.
move to the
Trees
right
or-
like a couple hundred yards and then try and see how great it looks.
It's gonna be the same.
It's
Yeah.
the same.
Yeah.
It's all like desert.
It might just be this particular satellite image, but still, I mean
Why
that's
But you notice?
look how large
there's-
these excavation tracks are.
There's reviews on it.
Yeah, it's a tourist attraction now. So that's where this is where this says Mel's Hole is.
Okay.
But the thing is, it's supposed to be 9 miles out.
What do the reviews say though?
I don't know. Here's Ellensburg. That doesn't look like 9 miles to me.
That's.
It looks like way more
That
than
looks
9
a
miles.
lot more. Now it does say that there's a rest stop, which would be like right. They're saying it's just a point where you can see it, which would make sense. But there might be another one over here. But it also says more
mean,
than
if you-
that, so
Like right around here.
maybe.
You can see from this one.
Well, it's supposed to be on this side of Ellensburg.
gotcha.
So, anyway. So it says 2 white squares. Back in the time, it might have been. Map software has changed since then, obviously. It's been a long time. Because this is in 2000, I believe, in this phone call.
Well, I
Oh,
mean,
wow.
I know.
24 years ago?
Yeah.
I know during which war was it? They developed a system to hide you from satellite, and it was the area where we live in. The college, because of the chemicals that they use, because it's like one of the leading chemical research labs or whatever, or biological research labs or whatever up here. They have one of the tops in the country, like top 3 or top 4 for it's like I can't remember. It's like plants or biology, some shit like that. And so they actually have a camo net over it, so that way, in the instance of a war, they can actually blot it out, so that way you can't see it via the satellite.
Interesting.
That's
So,
supposed to be the case, anyways, from what I was told.
at this point, Mel brings up the black lights again. And Art mentions that the news crews have gone out there since the last call and had gone to look for it. And they saw evidence of military vehicles, if not military vehicles, still on the location. So we don't know if it's actually the military or what. We're not sure what it is. But there's evidence of something going on, or rather was going on. Now, near the property is the Yakima firing range, or the U.S. Army Yakima Training Center, which is 327,000 acres consisting of 25 ranges and state-of-the-art range complex and shoot house. And this has been in the area since 1942, first as an anti-aircraft artillery range, and then as the Army's training center, which is mostly used for serious training ops, but also, interestingly enough, plays a part in the NSA with a role in Echelon, which is a global surveillance network, part of the Five Eyes system. Talk about another set of topics right there, man. That's, in words of the late Billy Mays.
We
But
should do
wait,
Denver.
hold on. There's more. We'll continue that in part 3 because it gets a lot weirder, guys. Thanks for watching, and we're going to start on the next episode. We'll see you soon. Make sure you like, follow, share, subscribe. Leave some comments down for us. If you have stuff that you want to share with us, vanishinggates@gmail.com would be the way to get a hold of us. We'd love to read your stories, your ideas, fun things. Don't forget to tell your friends. We're going to start posting more often. I'll probably be posting more small shows throughout the week because it took us a while to get this one up and running. So I'll be working on more material as I'm home more. Anyway, I'm Jay, and these are...
The no longer distracted Jack.
The kitty cat.
And we'll catch you guys next time. Goodbye and good nightmares.
Bye.
Bye.